Kathy Jain, Treasurer of ACS. I would like to welcome Jennifer Maclachlan, Speaker of the Day. She is the co-owner of a family-owned and small-operated chemical business, PID Analysis LLC US. She is responsible for managing relationship with the distributors and key clients, as well as the web-based marketing, social, and digital media initiative of which she was an early adopter. In 2018, Jennifer completed 3 years of service to the ACS as the chair of the American Chemical Society National Committee on Public Relations and Communication, and is currently serving as an associate to the Committee on the Chemical Safety as well as Public Relations Chair for the ACS Division of Small Chemical Businesses. She is the founder of the Science Cafe, which she started in 2011 with the support of the northeastern section of the ACS and International Year of Chemistry Movement. STEM Journey, of which she is the founding member and organizer, is an award-winning K-12 annual public outreach day-long event with collaboration efforts from the ACS local section, the Cap and Iceland Boy Scouts, Sandwich STEM Academy, and PID Analysis LLC. We highly welcome you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay. Thanks, Kati, and thanks to SCHB for this invitation today to speak. I am honored to do this today. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Today we're talking about using social media for startups and professional development. So there are 4 topics that I'll be covering today: social media for young entrepreneurs, networking and professional development, social media startup strategies, and smart use of Instagram and LinkedIn. So we start with social media for young entrepreneurs. So how do you get started as a young entrepreneur with social media? So first you have to start by naming or branding your startup or your newco, new company. The best way to start that off is to do a simple Google search. So if you have an idea for a name, Google search it, see what comes up. Check the Twitter hashtag. So go on to Twitter and check the name, use the hashtag, the £, and see what comes up. Maybe it's something that you don't want to come up. So you maybe want to rethink of what, people think, oh gosh, this name is something completely different than how I thought it was. This is a good way to kind of check this. And then once you've found something, you want to reserve your domain names. You want to do that really as your real first step once you've kind of decided what you're going to call your business, because that way you have your internet, your website secured. You don't even have to start your website. So in my introduction, we were talking about the Cape Cod Science Cafe or STEM Journey. So I don't even have websites for those events. Those ones, they're really just kind of events, right? So I have the domains. So when I'm ready to do that, I have the domains reserved, but I don't have a website yet. I largely use Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and other blogs and things like that to promote those events. Then you have to design a logo. And so if you aren't a graphic designer, or, you can always find someone who is. And so over here we have a lot of, you have the technical schools and things like that, where you can contact schools to get in touch with the art department and see if they have students who would be interested. Sometimes you can run kind of like a contest. So for very short money, you can get really, really nice design and be able to pay students for their work to design that. And then you want to get trademark protection and incorporate and things like that. And so if the business aspect is really what you're kind of looking for, where I can point you right now is to the Business and Entrepreneurship tab at the American Chemical Society. And so the division of small chemical businesses that I'm associated with and I do public relations for as part of my volunteer work to the society, we have something called Starting a Company. And so it's a webinar series that our chair, Jim Skinner, started this year on the ACS webinars channel. And so this is a free service that's provided. You can access all of the business and entrepreneurship webinars dating back to 2013 right here on this link. And again, this kind of gives you the how to really get started with business. So today I'm really going to be more talking about the social media aspects, promotion, branding, things like that, and less about the actual business aspects. So please use this resource. It's a great resource. So getting started at personal branding. So creating a personal brand and developing a social strategy to communicate your science are critical building blocks for maintaining professionalism across the new forms of media. So building the brand is so important from the very start. And you have to craft your social strategy. So what's a social strategy, right? This is how you're going to present your company, present your brand, present yourself out on social media. So crafting your social media strategy is the most important first step in engaging in social media for business. It's just 3 simple steps. So first, you have to decide which social networks you will use. Really got to think about this, because if you're creating this social strategy and this plan, you need to be able to follow it all the way through. You want to determine what content you will and won't share. So this is really important. So for your business page or your business social media platforms, you have to decide right away what you're going to share about. So make a list. Here's all the things that I'm going to share about. And then on the other side of the list, here's all the things that I won't share about. And so sometimes that can be political things or religious things, or anything that is not about your business. You really have to consider it. Is this related to my brand? Does this represent my brand well? Does this reflect, because it reflects back on yourself, right? So you really get to make sure what you share and what you won't share, you have that written down and you have it as part of your rules. And then think about how often will you share. Now, it depends on what social media network you're using, because sometimes those rules, like if you're sharing, 10 or 12 times a day on Facebook, that's too much, right? But if you're sharing 10 or 12 times a day on Twitter, that maybe isn't enough. So you really have to decide what network, and then what is that network, the tolerance for sharing and the frequency of sharing for that particular network. So you have to set your boundaries, and you have to do this early, like right away. You have to set your boundaries. What I mean by that is decide who you're going to connect with and on which social media platforms. So if you have friends, are they all going to like your business page? Are you going to, connect with them on LinkedIn? Maybe. I don't know. That's up to you, right? But you have to decide that straight away. And then determine how you're going to interact with your connections on the social networks. So that's really important too. Are you the kind of person who's going to, get into kind of like long comments back and forth with people? Are you going to be more of the kind of person who's like, I'll DM you, I'll direct message you, or let's take this offline, or whatever it is. But you have to decide up front how you're going to interact with people. And then connecting. So choosing who you connect with and on which social networks, right? Making connections. This can be done fast and easy by sending invites. So any social media that you that you are on will give you the option to kind of connect it to your address book. I would caution you not to do that, just because there's some folks in there that maybe you don't want to connect with. Like, Maybe it's family members. And this happened to me back when I was first kind of building my LinkedIn network. I'm like, oh, it sounds great. That sounds easy. Instead of just searching for all these people that I know that I want to be connected with. And so I started sending out, you know, kind of invitations to like family members, and people felt stressed out because they felt like I was like harassing them, but it wasn't me. It was really like LinkedIn sending me these automated messages. Jennifer really wants to connect with you. She really wants to connect. So you get to think about that too, and how the connections really should be more meaningful than that. And then social media for brand building. So you need to develop your personal brand, a social strategy, and a clear message. And so anytime you're sharing anything, you really need to think about the clear message that you're sending. So for instance, if I were to reshare something that one of my connections shared on LinkedIn, if their description of the event isn't really clear, I really need to explain to my followers why I'm sharing this. And so that's what I mean by clear messaging. Make sure that people understand why you're sharing something. This is a really exciting event happening that, you know, people in, you know, life sciences might be interested in, something like that, or you can frame it for people. So people are like keywords like, oh, life sciences, I like that, or I do that, or that kind of a thing. So you really want to be very clear why you're sharing something. And so back to the personal branding, right? Your personal brand should be as succinct as your Twitter bio, okay? So this is my Twitter bio. PID Analyzers is masterminded by a father-daughter team specializing in analytical and industrial hygiene instrumentation. Also, these are my hashtags: SciComm, so that's science communication, STEM education, and teen workplace safety. So as you're reading my bio, you know that I'm going to be tweeting about all of these things. That's the expectation, right? So when you read someone's Twitter bio, is that, oh, this person sounds kind of interesting, lives on Cape Cod, okay, you know, here's the, goes to my blog, you know. So this is my personal brand right here. This is the best sort of example of my personal brand. These are all the things I'm going to tweet about, share about, social media about, that kind of thing. And then personal branding and profile avatar, the consistency, and then the likeness, right? So typically what I would do is when I do like kind of new headshots, I'll use maybe not the exact same one through all the social media, but it will be like from the same photo shoot. So, you know, slightly different for each of the different social media vehicles, but it's still me. It looks an awful lot like me. It's updated, right? You want to keep an updated headshot. And same thing with your avatar. Your avatar should look like you, right? That's the point. So use the same profile pic throughout your social media, the same way that a business would use a logo, because this is your brand. It's you. You're the brand. And then know who's in your networks. This one's fun, right? So if you go through kind of your different, know your audience, periodically scroll through all your connections. You'll be surprised at who you're still connected. You're like, this person never posts anything, right? And they're just sort of lurking in the background, kind of knowing everything that you're up to, but they never share anything. So before you post anything, ask yourself, is it consistent with my personal brand? Am I okay with my parents, my boss, my coworkers, anybody who's in my networks? What about people who aren't in your networks too, who might see this post? So you always think about that before you post anything. And before you like or retweet or reshare or share content, ask yourself, do I endorse this? Because by you sharing this and you're putting your brand out there and your brand on it, it's an endorsement. Even if you say it's not, it is. So that's something you really want to be careful of. And then Google yourself, and do this often, right? Because this is how other people, I mean, anybody that we're going to do business with, you know, people will Google us, right? They'll Google my father and I, and they're like, oh, we really like the, you know, the work, Jennifer, that you do with, you know, teen workplace health and safety and things like that. All of this stuff comes up, or the Cape Cod Science Cafe, or STEM Journey, or the stuff we do with the Boy Scouts. Like, all of that comes up. All of the talks that I give come up. Everything comes up. And so you want to make sure that all that stuff that's cropping up is the good stuff, right? Because this is the stuff that prospective employers, or, you know, you're trying to get into grad school or things like that. That's the first place that people go, is they Google you to learn more about you, see what you do in your personal and professional life. So what do you do on when you share? So you should share your personality, right? So you don't have to be, just because, you know, you're supposed to be professional, it doesn't mean you have to be boring, right? So post things that you want your friends to know about you. Post good photos. Don't post bad photos. Post good photos of yourself, of your family, of your friends, of your pets. Everybody loves pet pictures, right? Check in places where you want people to know where you are and why you're there. Why, like, you know, why are you checking in at this place? Explain it a little bit, maybe, for people. This is part of the kind of giving off that, you know, clear messaging, right? So you want to have a clear message. And then amplify your share using the simple share tool, right? Amplify it to your personal networks. And some people are very strictly like, they don't want to mix between personal and business professional. But this is, you know, again, it's how you decide to set your things up. For myself personally, a lot of my friends want to know what I'm doing, like with business. A lot of my friends are business friends, right? So, you know, and people get offended if you only share to certain groups. So it's kind of like I share it out and I'll be like, oh, for my ACS friends, or oh, for my industrial hygiene friends. So I've framed it, but I leave it up to everybody else to say, like, I'm just going to ignore it. It's not for me. You know what I mean? So that kind of thing. But your personal network can be a very powerful marketing tool. So just keep that in mind. All it takes is one screenshot, right? That's it. One mistake, one bad message, photo, whatever it is. So be really, really careful. And I know stuff like, you know, oh, okay, on, you know, Snapchat, right? Like it tells you when they screenshot it. That's just as terrifying as not knowing if somebody had screenshot something. So be careful out there. And this kind of stuff does creep up. And so when you're, you know, especially as you're younger and, like, again, moving towards a professional career, don't put yourself in this situation where you're going to get in trouble with a post that you made that someone, even after you delete it, someone's captured it somewhere. So personal versus professional, maintaining professionalism throughout the digital landscape is essential for success with personal branding and pre-career advancement. You have to be thinking, as students, you have to be thinking about advancing in your career even before you have your career. Okay, so do everything you can to make sure that you can do that. And then unfollow. Do you get offended when people unfollow you? Don't get offended. Okay, you don't need to cry about it. It's okay. You don't need to overthink it. People unfollow people for a lot of different reasons. You can move on with your day, you can move on with your life, and move on with your social media. It's okay. Some people just leave social media and, like, it feels like you were offended or unfollowed or whatever it is, and it's really okay. Sometimes people don't like what you post. Sometimes you post too much, whatever it is, you know, and sometimes it's awkward. Like sometimes I have people who have unfollowed me and, like, I'll see them out in public, like at the grocery store or something, and they're super friendly and I'm like, why'd they unfollow me? Why'd you unfollow me? And then I'm like, that's crazy, stop. stop, move on. So anyway, if you're gonna be out there and you're gonna be an entrepreneur and you're gonna be, or just even just a successful person and successful on social media, you can't feel bad about stuff like that. Maybe just for a second, and then you're gonna move on with your day. And then if your feed is boring, or if it's stressing you out, you're doing it wrong. You cannot be, like something that will set you off. There's a person that you follow and they're just so annoying. Unfollow them. You can do that. Or maybe that causes too much drama in your friend circle or family or whatever it is. So just hide them. Who cares? Nobody will know that you've hidden them, and you'll feel so much better. You won't feel so aggravated and agitated. So there's things you can do to make your overall experience on social media better. And then social media conduct and behavior. So don't post to social media anything that's embarrassing. Any embarrassing things about yourself, about other people, just don't do that. And it's okay to post later, right? So like on Instagram, you have latergram, like hashtag latergram, right? Do that. especially if like people aren't looking their best, it's been like a long day or something like that, like maybe give like photo editing a chance, just post good pictures of people and watch what you like, because everyone in your network can see that you like it. Don't get into internet fights with people. Like that's not professional, and that's the kind of stuff that gets screenshot and comes back to you. And then be a provider of valuable information. So you want to provide valuable information to people, right? So anytime you're going to share something that's not your content, that's someone else's content, make sure that you actually click the link, right? Make sure it goes somewhere where people are expecting it to go. That's not like a clickbait thing, or it's going to go, here's this great article on, and then it goes to the great article, right? Because I'm endorsing it, I'm sharing it, I'm retweeting it. So make sure that you're the person that people can depend on for good information, not the 404 error. And this is how you build your reputation, right? So be that person that your family, your friends, your advisor, your employer, coworkers, connections, and followers can rely on for information concerning science, right? Current community or global events, and local or online science meetings, seminars, things that are of high interest to you and you want to share them with your network. So build that trust. And then telephone etiquette, like who talks on the phone? No, I'm just kidding. So, again, telephone etiquette though is pretty important nowadays, is that you make an appointment, right? I mean, it's so crazy sometimes, and I think a lot of people still have trouble with that, but like, you can't just like call somebody, like you have to text them first and say like, are you available for a short phone call, or whatever the case is. But any type of communication, you really have to know how to communicate effectively, and that's one of the ways you communicate effectively by phone, is by making appointments to make phone calls. And then, so we're getting near the end of this particular segment. But if you run a marathon in a forest, but there's no one around to social media about it, did you even run the marathon? I mean, the answer is obviously no. It didn't really happen if you didn't share about it on social media, right? But anyway, that's one of my like favorite little jokes there. So I can stop here for just a second if there's any questions that anyone has on that first segment, or I can keep going. So I'll defer to Sakshi on this one.
Yeah, so does anybody have any questions? You can just unmute and say. Well, I enjoyed the segment, Jennifer, so it was really great.
It's fine. We can wait till the end too. I just wanted to make sure before I was just talking too long. So.
No, it's fine. Yeah, so we'll take questions in the end. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next segment, which is the networking and professional development. And so that's actually what we're doing today, right? So this webinar today is a form of networking and professional development. So what I'd recommend now is take advantage now. So as we start seeing things kind of starting to open up, like I just 2 days ago got a ticket to the first in-person local section meeting. It's for another one of the groups that I'm involved in. It's the American Industrial Hygiene Association. And I had actually, the last time we actually had an in-person meeting was February of 2020. And it was a meeting that we were hosting at one of our other companies. And so like very exciting, you know, like, and it's going to be a hybrid event. So it's limited attendance, but take advantage now, right? While these webinars and local section chapter meetings of professional societies are online and like totally online. So this year I had an opportunity to give a talk at the California Industrial Hygiene local section in California, right? So I never would have had that opportunity otherwise, because it wouldn't have been a webinar. It would have been an in-person meeting, right? So then, you know, I'm kind of tapped into that network now. I'm like, oh, this is great, you know? And also from like a business perspective, because I had the opportunity to sponsor it with my company. And so I was able to kind of reach all of these other industrial hygienists that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. I go to kind of local tabletop shows in the New England area, so East Coast, but I wouldn't travel to the West Coast for just for like a local section meeting. So anyway, so take advantage of these of as things start to roll out hybrid, take advantage of the virtual online stuff. And then there's numerous meetings throughout the rest of 2021 and even into 2022 that have been declared virtual. So attend the ones that interest you. AAAS, that's the American Association for the Advancement of Science, they've already declared that their meeting in 2022 is virtual. So if that's something like kind of general science interest for a society, that's a really nice, you know, if you're not quite sure what your interest in science is, that's a great place to start, because then they have little they call them kind of like groups, and they have like a chemistry group, and they have all the different types of science. So it's the world's largest general science society. So that's a good one. So networking with a COVID-19 lens, right? Easy street, do not enter, you know, like road closed, like everything felt like roadblocks, you know. And it was actually kind of funny, the way that we started off coming in. So we were coming right into the pandemic was like just straight ahead, right? And we had the American Chemical Society meeting, and they weren't canceling it. They just like weren't going to cancel it, and they were like, what are they doing? You know, like they couldn't get out of their contracts and this whole thing. And they finally just pulled the plug on it. And then we still had all of our meetings, and like nobody knew what we were like, what are we doing? You know, and we're like, we need to, you know, for the small chemical business division, they're like, we need to help members, you know, and it's like, it was so overwhelming, right? And we couldn't even think beyond like what was going on. I'm like, I have to worry about like my company, and I have employees and my you know, and I'm like, members, okay. So they're like, let's just start doing telephone calls. So we started off doing like these telephone calls, and we were like, how's everybody feeling today? How are you guys doing? How are you doing? Did you apply for funding? Like, you know, just like this kind of like whole thing is like this sort of support group. And then it turns into this like weekly, you know, thing like this, like we're doing right now, where it's like professional development. and networking and socializing and like making friends and making connections, and people are doing business together because of it. So it's like, it's amazing how something can start off, you know, so like, and then get so cool, you know, get so cool. So anyway, that's that story. But how do you integrate social media and traditional networking? Well, I think we're doing it pretty well right now, right? So pay attention to people's network updates. And so hopefully people's network updates are like more positive and, you know, have like more, you know, kind of content to them, right? Mention recent ones when you see that person on Zoom. So like, that's easy, right? Like we see like people on Zoom every week, multiple times a week. So you can kind of, you know, stay in touch, and don't be afraid to exchange contact information with people at a Zoom social event. And hopefully most of the folks that, or most of the events that you go to will have the ability to have a chat feature. I know some of the Zoom products and the webinar ones, you don't have that ability where you can message people. So hopefully that's one of them. Remember, the goal of networking is to expand your network and ultimately connect with a broader audience. Keep in mind too, if you saw someone that you wanted to talk to, you can always contact the organizer. A lot of people will contact me after one of our Friday night sessions, and they'll be like, oh, can you put me in touch with so-and-so, or and that kind of thing, and I can do that. It's better when people can do it on their own, but I'm always happy to kind of connect people, because that's the point, right? So this is the Division of Small Chemical Businesses. And so this is what I was talking about, where we had started off with a teleconference, like a telephone call with like, you know, 10 people on the call, to, you know, our highest number I think we've had. We did a vaccine one on legal aspects and ethical aspects of the vaccine rollout, and we had like 75 people on that call on Zoom. But so we typically meet Friday nights. This is open to anybody who's interested. So this week our topic, June 4th, our topic is how much in a business plan, how much intellectual property should be put into a business plan. And so kind of how do you protect your trade secrets or your intellectual property while trying to get funding for your business is really, so we have a panel of patent attorneys who are going to be talking, and then also Jim Skinner, who's our kind of resident expert on starting a business. And then we've also started to add coffee hours, which is exciting because it's a better time, particularly for you guys to come to, right? So, you know, the happy hour is like 7 p.m. Eastern. So that's, you know, and then the coffee time is, I think we've sort of settled in around like the noontime hour. So that we kind of capture California that way, and they're just getting around to having their coffee anyway, so we have it together. And we'll start to be putting in more programming weekly. So if, and then that's my email address. So send me an email if you want an invitation to the Small Chemical Business Social Hour / professional development. Okay, so then we're moving on to the next segment, which is social media startup strategies. So from the very beginning, you have to decide, what are you going to do yourself, and then what are you going to outsource? And let's be honest, if you're starting a business, you're probably doing everything, like totally everything all at once, right? But you really have to, you do get to a certain point. It's important to know your strengths and weaknesses. Like, is it going to take you so much longer to do this? Would it be better to preserve that and have someone else do it for you? So those are decisions you have to make yourself though. So, but you have to start off by choosing your social media platforms carefully. Like, what can you manage well? You know, so if you look at, so someone like myself and my father, we run our business together. There's a handful of social media that my father can manage without too much of my intervention. But you know, he's like the most comfortable. He's really comfortable on Facebook. but like his personal Facebook. And he's comfortable on LinkedIn, but he doesn't really go to LinkedIn unless he's prompted to go to LinkedIn. Do you know what I mean? So when he wants to share something, it's like a big deal, and he's gonna like get on now like everything and start sharing everything, right? So, but for me, like I'm comfortable in, you know, I don't know, 6 or 7 different platforms. And so I know how to communicate within each one. I'm also in charge of sales and marketing, so I have to do this for my job. So it's different. So as I'm talking about this today, just keep that in mind. And that some of it didn't come as easy as others, and some of it's still uncomfortable. And like, I don't really know how I can use Snapchat for business. Like, I haven't figured that out yet. And I definitely want to tap into some TikTok, but I'm still, you know, there's still some areas where I'm like, you know, I need more lessons. But anyway, so start from a level of comfort, right? What social media do you like to use? Like, what do you like to use? And then think about why you like to use it, and think about how you can leverage that feeling into getting your brand out there, leveraging it for your brand. So start there. So you don't have to be an aficionado in everything. You can actually just work in one area and really grow that area, and then start to expand later on to the other areas. But in order to be really meaningful about your social media and about your brand and about getting that out there, you need to do it well, at least on one platform, before you get all crazy and do everything and start like, you know, just like broadcasting stuff. Because when you start broadcasting stuff out there and you're not following up and you're not interacting, it's pretty ineffective. So think about that. Find someone like you, right, who does social media exceptionally well. And then like, so they're going to be like the social media mentor that they don't know that they are. Like, it doesn't have to be, it could be like someone famous, it could be like a competitor, it could be, you know what I mean? It's just like we were sort of creepy watching them from afar, but starting to apply that knowledge base to how you want to promote your brand and how you want to use it. Like, you're like, oh, I really like how they're using like photographs in their, you know, tweets or whatever it is, or they're however they're tagging other brands, or, you know, whatever they're doing that you like, that resonates with you, that speaks to you, that you can apply to yourself. So not copying, emulating, right? Flattery. So think about that. Use that good stuff for yourself and apply it to yourself. And then think about how well you can represent or build your brand on that platform. And then think about the limits, right? Like, only reaching like, you know, this market segment or this, you know, whatever it is. And so if you start to get to that point where you're like, I gotta expand, think about the next level of expansion. And again, go through all the social media, go through the different platforms. And at this point, you've already picked your comfort place, you've got your thing going, and then start to branch out and say, oh, okay, how can I do this? Is my competitor here? If my competitor's here, I should probably be here. So you got to think about that too, and then figure out a way to learn it, and learning it by following examples. Okay, so now we're on to the last segment, which is the ready, set, go. Smart use of LinkedIn and Instagram. Okay, so we're ready to kind of execute, right? So this is my guide at PidGirl, guide to LinkedIn. So 5 things, right? Good headshot, customize URL, publish a summary, update your status, and endorsements. Yeah, it's easy, right? Okay. So hopefully everybody has a LinkedIn profile. I can't see everybody, but if everyone can kind of, anybody not have a LinkedIn? Can you see Sakshi? Is everybody like waving their hands?
Yeah, so if anybody does not have a LinkedIn profile, they can just, you know, put in the chat box quickly. Completely fine. We are here, everyone, to learn only. So it's completely fine.
So in my opinion, it's never too early to have a LinkedIn. And I mean, especially an undergrad, you need a LinkedIn. You need, as you're going to meet so many people, right?
We have someone. Yeah. Okay, Pranay, would you like to unmute?
Yes.
Yeah. So Jennifer, Pranay here does not have the LinkedIn profile. So would you like to say something?
Oh, okay. So have you had, do people ask you to link in?
That some of my classmates have asked me to join, but I don't know. I didn't, think more about it. Didn't find particular use case of it till now. I mean, I'm not exposed to much industry people.
Okay. Okay. So I would recommend setting that up now. So even just good headshot, and I'll go through kind of the steps right now, but I would recommend doing that now, just because as you start to meet people and maybe, as you start to learn what you really want to be doing, it's going to be helpful to have that all in one area. And sometimes you meet people and it's like years later that you're like, oh, I met that person. Like, I met someone at a American Physical Society luncheon that I ended up like asking to be a speaker, or, and it was years later, and that kind of thing. So sometimes it doesn't crop up like why it's important when you first meet them, but it does become important, or it becomes important later if you're looking for a recommendation, or like you're like, oh, I met you at this, Zoom meeting in 2021, and it's like, something that they can help you with, or you can help them with, that kind of thing. So I would recommend starting to build your network now if you can. So part of the LinkedIn, when I mentioned before, like with my father, right? So he doesn't have LinkedIn on his phone. I treat LinkedIn like it's a social network, right? So it's on my phone. I get I don't have to wait for it to like email me. If somebody's, someone in my network's done something, it's like I'm on it all the time. I know when someone's done something. Bernie, I saw that 3 hours ago. What are you talking about? So I definitely, and that's really important. Again, sales and marketing, it's really important for me to know what people are doing when they're doing it. So I find out about, different talks, like particularly like right now, this is how I find out that like other, all these kind of virtual opportunities. To get professional development, to network, to connect with people that I haven't now seen in a year and a half, So anyway, that's how I know what's happening. I have it on my mobile device, right? So starting off with a good headshot, this is really important. Right? When people do that with their, like, they have the silhouette, or they have like the half crop, like the bad crop, it's terrible. So like, don't do that. It's actually better to have a silhouette than have the bad crop picture. Well, you're like, oh, I look so great in this picture. And then you're like, bad crop, don't do that. Come on, you can take a selfie better than that. And then when people post pictures of themselves, like, especially, like I get like on Facebook, or like people put up like younger pictures or whatever, like fine. LinkedIn, seriously, you gotta have something current. Like you change your hair color, like you got new glasses, like you gotta look current, okay? Because you have to. The whole point is that people are supposed to be able to recognize you, so that's it's part of it. Customized URL. This is really important. Just because, so like the signature line, right? Signature line on my emails, I put my LinkedIn, right? So if I put like the one that they gave me, it would be like a series of like random numbers and letters. Like it just doesn't look good. This is clean. This can go on a business card. We're just talking about not having LinkedIn. If you have a LinkedIn, you've got your customized URL, you guys should all have business cards, right? So what can you put on your business card? Your LinkedIn profile, right? And then maybe a sentence about, you know, your interests, you know, things like that. So as you like meet people, you can exchange that information. So you don't need to have a job to have a business card, but you need to have some way for people to connect with you and start building your network. And then publishing a summary. This is really important, right? Just because when people are just connecting with you, they want to know why they should connect with you, right? And by publishing a summary, you are telling people why they want to connect with you. So that's important. And it can just be a couple sentences. It doesn't have to be, you know, a novel. It's okay. But just some reason, like, other than here's my name, here's my, you know, here's my customized URL. Like, why do you want to link in with me? And then updates. So if you're going to go as far as get a LinkedIn profile, print it on your business cards, have your customized URL, you should really start using LinkedIn, right? So updates are for everybody. Everybody can have an update, right? Whether you work in industry, academia, government, if you're a student, the update function should be utilized to share what you're working on. Obviously not to violate any type of intellectual property, of course. You gotta be careful what you say, how you say it, you know, how you share it. You got to find out what the rules are at the place, like in your research lab or in your whatever it is at your job. Are you allowed to share stuff? Because I've had employees who have like shared stuff, and I'm like, you need to take that down. You can't share that. Like, that's proprietary information. So you really have to know got to know what the rules are, right? Makes everything so much easier in life when you know what the rules are. Share about presentations that you have given. You know, you can post your presentations, things like that. You can always give a presentation and then post like a slightly less, you know, sharey version of the presentation, maybe with like less data or whatever it is. You have to just be careful about what you're sharing. Blog posts, meetings that you're attending. That's always interesting, particularly if you have friends in your network or colleagues who might also be interested in what you're attending, and like they might want to go themselves. Interesting articles that you've read, publications that you're authored on, reshare news from a connection, making sure that you kind of have that clear messaging when you do that so people understand why you're sharing it. And then how do you share about your publications without violating copyright, right? So very easily, right? You can just quite frankly say, this article's behind a paywall, but I'm really, really excited that I have this article published. Like, this was exciting having, you know, public relations makeover, rebranding for the digital age, published in Chemical and Engineering News. So most of the people in my friends list aren't ACS members, so I couldn't access it, but they were also like really excited for me that I was excited for myself that I got this published. So that's the way to do it. Open source, great. You can, you know, the one on the right here, that was an open source article, so, you know, anybody can read it anywhere. And so that's important too, the difference between paid and open source. And then endorsements. So on the endorsements, you want to just make sure when people are endorsing you for like certain skills before publishing them to your profile, just make sure that you have the skills. It sounds like pretty simple and obvious, but don't just publish whatever because somebody took the time to like click a few boxes and hit share. Like, just make sure you have that skill set because folks might take you up on it. And it's sort of embarrassing to be like, oh, I don't know how to do that at all. Where did you hear that I do this? Oh, it's on my LinkedIn. Oh, it's published to my profile. So that's just awkward. Avoid awkward situations if you can. Tagging on LinkedIn. So like you can tag on anything, right? The @ sign and then The name, this is great on LinkedIn and increases the visibility of your share, but make sure that you have permission to do it. Like if you're working on a project with someone, or you're working on, you know, like a seminar or something, and you're like, oh, is it okay if I tag you on LinkedIn? They might be like, no, because, you know, I don't want my boss to know that I'm spending, or whatever it is, my advisor to know that I'm spending time doing this. I'd really prefer that you didn't. So anytime you tag photos on Facebook or Instagram, or if you're checking in somewhere on Facebook and whatever it is, make sure that the folks that you're with, that you're tagging, know that you're tagging them and have their permission. And if you don't have their permission, don't tag them. And then go a step further and be like, are you okay if I post this picture? I won't tag you. And they might say they're still not okay with it. And then you got to be okay with that, not sharing it, even though it feels like it didn't really happen, right? Anyway, be a courteous poster. That's the takeaway on that slide. And then, speaking of taking it away, you can take it with you when you go, right? You'll be able to take your contacts with you when you leave your job if you're linked in with them. However, make sure that for LinkedIn specifically, probably it's a good practice straight across the board, but particularly for LinkedIn, make sure to use your personal email with LinkedIn. That way, if, you know, who knows what happens, and you always have to, in business, always have your exit plan in mind. That's like number one for an entrepreneur. You got to have an exit plan. Things may not go well at the end, and you may not have access to your company email for whatever reason. So in order to keep your contacts with you, use your personal email on LinkedIn. It's great advice. And then save the birthday wishes for the other social media. Don't use it on LinkedIn. I know, like on LinkedIn, there's a function where it's like, oh, it's so-and-so's birthday. And it's like, if you know them, send them a message, you know, like that's fine. You can send them a LinkedIn message, but don't like post on their wall. Like save that for Facebook, or, you know, whatever other social media, not the business one. And then here's @FitGirls how to Instagram. So right from the start, it's really important to choose your handle or your Insta name wisely. So choose it wisely and keep it consistent if possible. So obviously mine's @FitGirl. That's what I use straight all the way across, right across the board. That's my Twitter handle, it's my Instagram, email, everything, right? And then think about, what's the purpose of the account? Like, are you trying to build a brand? Are you trying to meet people with similar interests? Is it for fun? Are you trying to connect with friends? Like, what's the purpose of this? Is it, you need to know what that is. And then consider having a business account and a personal account. Totally separate. Totally separate. So I have an @PidGirl account. I have an @PIDHNU account. That's something that's new from a business perspective. So I have the business account. And I'm really trying to think about how, so I have it reserved. I haven't posted on it. I have the logo up on it. And I'm at a position now where I'm like, how do I want to structure this? Like, what do I want to do? I kind of want to tell a story. I want to kind of tell like the history of the company. And so I'm thinking about what I want to do. So I've got it reserved. It's there. And I'm ready to kind of act on it. But I'm not like, I got to do it all at once. Like I really want to do it really thoughtfully, how I'm crafting it. So think about that too. Think about reserving, this would be sort of an example of reserving a domain, like reserving a name on the social media, and then really thinking about your strategy and like how you're going to lay it out. The @PidGirl is actually my personal Instagram, but it's professional, but it's more interest-based and hobby-based and things that are, you know, more about me, less about my company. And so the other account's going to be about PID analyzers. So think about that. And then think about, on a personal account, is it going to be private or public? And hopefully your company account will be public. But again, you have to decide how you want to do, how you want to interact. What's the purpose of the account? That sort of answers all the other questions. And then what are you going to post about? This is part of your social strategy, right? You should already know this stuff before you start posting. You know, this is how you write your bio. And then you start to update your bio as your interests and objectives start to change, and that's okay. So if you find like that you're no longer, you know, into bike riding or whatever it is, then just take that out and put in what you're into, and like that's what you're going to be posting about. So it's important for people to know this. And then Snapchat, you need Snapchat lessons. Ask a 14-year-old. 14-year-olds are proficient in Snapchat. It's true. And again, you know, I know that it's popular probably up to like age 25, 26 or something like that. The 14-year-olds can like whiz through and give you lessons. And then other people are just used to, you know, using this as a kind of communication tool with their friends. So, and then if you're interested, and I wrote a chapter for this book a few years ago, Communicating Chemistry Through Social Media. It's a, you know, some of the specifics are a little dated, but there's some really good information, particularly from an academic perspective as well, in communicating chemistry through social media. And we're actually in talks about doing an updated version. So stay tuned for that, and connect with me socially. These are the platforms that I interact on. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity today to come in and share about social media. One of my favorite, social media for science is like one of my favorite topics. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It was really great to have you, and all the segments were just amazing. And I think everyone enjoyed it. So yeah, we have a few questions that we asked people if they have any specific questions for you while registering for the webinar. So I would just ask Ketki to read out them for us.
Yes, actually, sure. So can we start?
Yeah,
Okay, so the first question is, what are the other means of communication rather than just meetings?
Other ways of communication other than meetings. With other, I mean, I guess like I've considered meetings to be the best place to meet people you wouldn't otherwise have met, right? So I think of it as sort of like that big network expansion, is meeting people at meetings, and then from there developing those relationships with them at like the next meeting, right? If I look back on it, like when I would go to these meetings, and even in the recent past, like the last few years, when I would go to this kind of like hazardous materials kind of seminar training thing, and I go and it's like I literally don't know anybody at all, like no one, and they have like sit down awkwardly at lunch with people and be like, hi, you know. It's like I started going to this, and I sort of developed a little group of friends, but it took a while. I don't know. So like I always think in terms of meetings for myself, and like that's how I meet people, is at meetings and at seminars.
Okay, thank you so much. So the next question is, what is the scope of artificial intelligence in the near future in this particular field?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so what is the scope of artificial intelligence in this particular field in near future?
I don't know. I haven't really thought about that.
Okay, so we'll just move on to the next question then. Okay, so how can we use LinkedIn for our professional growth being a first-year student?
just starting to meet people. So as you start to meet people, as you hand out a card, like, here's my LinkedIn, let's link in, you know, that kind of thing, it's going to be helpful. And again, same thing, like, oh, we did something interesting in class today, or we learned this, or, you know, like that kind of, the more you share and update, the more your whole, like, all your connections will see that update. And so you're constantly, like, your people are reminded that you're there. It's like a reminder. Everyone's like, oh, like, you post so much. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, yeah, like, all the time. Like, I always see your stuff. And I'm like, right, that's the point. So you're constantly in people's feeds, not in like a really obnoxious way, like, not like, but enough so that people recognize it.
Okay, thank you. So one of the members has asked you, what is the use of Instagram for research purposes?
I don't know, because it took me until now, like like end of 2020, to actually have a business Instagram. So I'm still trying to figure that out. And I look at what I like to follow, and I like to follow a lot of businesses, you know, more like lifestyle businesses though. So like kind of yoga, kind of, you know, like different studios and things like that. So I'm trying to figure out, is there really a place on Instagram for business, like for analyzers, for analytical instrumentation? So I'll have to get back to you on that. But I'm thinking in terms of, like, if people are using the platform, and then they like the brand, and if what I'm turning out isn't super like, it's not like, by my analyzers, it's more of like, here's like this neat story about the time that my dad did, you know what I'm saying? Like, where it's more of like that kind of human connection versus, so it's not so heavy on the brand and more anecdotal. So that's what I think that's where the value is. So that's what I'm going to be working on this year.
Okay, thanks so much. And so the next question that we have is, what should we add or delete specifically from our Instagram page or the profile, and how often should we keep it updated? Like,
so that's funny. So,
I guess same thing will go for LinkedIn also, because people keep.
Yeah, this is for LinkedIn only.
So deleting it from your profile, like, what you mean, like old stuff or stuff that's questionable, or is that what you mean?
Yeah, old stuff basically. Like, for example, now I'm an undergrad and I'm going to pursue my master's. So sometimes I think, do I really need to keep the high school stuff there, or the school time? Like, does it really make sense? Because in resumes or CVs, people advise us that you don't need to keep your school time achievements, because, I mean, of course, like, keep it latest. So how about LinkedIn?
Well, I mean, I guess, like, you can still, you're just kind of pushing it down, right? I mean, I would keep some of that stuff on there, just because some of it might be the unusual things, the things that really set you apart from other people. I would keep on there, even if it's high school, even if it was some type of achievement that you had in high school listed under achievements, put the date, you know what I mean, describe it. So I would keep that on there, but as you kind of move up in levels, make sure that's what people see at the top, and then just keep kind of pushing the old stuff down.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so the next question is like a very common one, and we all have it on our mind. So it's basically how to use social media, but how to prevent it from using us. So how can we prevent its misuse, basically?
So I think setting up your privacy settings, I think that's pretty important. And you have privacy settings on all of the accounts. So, and then That's a hard one because you want to use the blocking as necessary. Does that make sense? Like, so as necessary, use blocking function to protect yourself from people who aren't nice. That makes sense. People that you don't want to connect with, like ever, you know, like that kind of thing. So I guess between privacy and blocking and keeping it so that you're still open and authentic without it being like too difficult.
Thank you so much. So now over to you, Sakshi.
Okay, so if anybody wants to say something, comment, or just ask anything specific with respect to your like, I'm sure everyone must be having some or the other doubts with respect to your own profiles on LinkedIn. So you may just ask.
And if anyone has any like specific questions that they want to ask me after too, like you can send me an email and connect up with me, whatever it is. But if you had specific questions, I'm happy to answer those too privately if folks would like.
Yeah. Is somebody saying something? Okay, Jennifer, I had a question. When we started as a student chapter, so we used to, initially just post our promotional posters on LinkedIn, and then post another one talking about how it happened, like how good it was, how amazing it was, and we used to, post these Zoom screenshots because we started online, so it was all that we had. Somewhere we thought that it would be too much of spamming in people's feeds, or is it okay, like having two different posts for the same event? So
yeah, no, I don't think you're spamming people's feeds. I think you have to watch that when you have to be careful more so with email, right? So if you're sending too many emails, that's when people get annoyed by it. Because I think people are just used to scrolling by. Like if you're not interested, you're just gonna keep scrolling, and it doesn't bother you. They like your chapter, so they do like to see your content, but if they don't want to stop, they won't. But email's like more intrusive, and like, too many emails is too much. So that's what I think. So I think you're okay. I think you're okay to do that. And a lot of times when I would do, back when I did, in-person events, like a lot of times, I'd be promoting the event, and then you would get like the bigger story would come when you're reporting about what happened at the event. So then you sort of have more press after, right? So like that's pretty common too. And people like that, because then they're like, oh, I wish I knew about it. And you're like, I posted about it like 400 times. I don't know how you didn't see it, so.
Okay, thank you. So does anybody want to ask any specific question? Okay, so I would like to invite Soham. He's our chapter secretary. He would like to give a short word of thanks. So, yeah, Soham, please go ahead.
So, good evening, everybody. I am Soham Morris, Secretary for the ACS Bombay College of Pharmacy Student Chapter, and it is a pleasure to give a vote of thanks today. Truly, it was a very informative webinar on social media management for professional growth and brand building. I would like to thank our speaker for today, Jennifer Maclachlan, branding consultant, PID Analyzers LLC, Massachusetts. Thank you for your wonderful insights on today's topic, and thank you for giving such wonderful answers to the questions. I would like to thank our faculty advisor, Dr. Krishna Iyer, our faculty co-advisors, Dr. Sagar Patel and Dr. Elvis Martis, and the whole ACS-BCP team for organizing and managing today's webinar. I would like to thank every faculty member for taking time after this busy schedule and attending this webinar. And I would also like to thank the undergraduate, postgraduate, and all the PhD students who attended this webinar and have sat through it with great interest. Now, before leaving this meeting, we have posted the link for the feedback form in the chat box. So kindly fill it at your earliest. And lastly, I would request all of us in the meeting to switch on their cameras so that we could take a screenshot of today's event.
Yeah, so requesting you all to just show your pretty faces, have a feel of a meeting. Yeah, we'll just wait. And in case you want to say something to Jennifer, or just say how you felt about the webinar, you can say so too. Okay, Harshita, are we taking it? The screenshot.
Yes, I'm taking.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, it's done.
Okay. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming here and again sharing your amazing tips and tricks of how to use Instagram and LinkedIn. It was really amazing. These points generally, are not spoken of usually. People have to figure out by themselves. So you gave us the key to use these amazing social media platforms. So thanks once again.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yes, everyone, thanks again for joining. Have a good day to Jennifer, and yeah, good evening to all. Good night. Yeah. So we can call it a day.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.